Amid the echoing halls of Seattle's airport, a young girl's journey was about to collide with something no one could predict. Emma Evans, clutching her favorite teddy bear, wandered just a little too far from safety, her fate now hanging on a moment unseen. But in a crowd full of strangers whose instincts would rise above the noise, and when danger wears a friendly face, will anyone see the truth in time? Stay with us because the answer will surprise you, and the heart of this story is only just unfolding. Seattle awoke shrouded in silver mist, the morning air laced with the faint chill of an early spring, barely breaking free from winter's grasp. At Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, light rain traced slow paths down tall windows, blurring the city's distant skyline into watercolors of gray and blue. Outside, taxis hissed through wet pavement, their headlights slicing the fog as travelers hurried beneath umbrellas and suitcases. Inside the terminal pulsed with quiet anticipation. Voices, low footsteps, quick rolling luggage marking the rhythm of hundreds of stories crossing for a moment in this vast humming space. Among those stories was the Evans family, standing in line at the Alaska Airlines check-in counter. David Evans, a 38-year-old structural engineer, wore a sturdy navy parka and faded jeans, his tall frame slightly stooped to better hear his wife in the morning bustle. David's dark hair was carefully combed, but already damp at the edges from Seattle's perpetual drizzle. He moved with a calm precision, a product of years on job sites where a single mistake could bring steel and dreams crashing down. Beneath the calm, though, was a heart that beat anxiously for his family. David had always been the quiet anchor, thoughtful, gentle with words, but fierce in his devotion. His careful nature was shaped by a childhood, shadowed by his father's long absences, and a promise to never leave his loved ones guessing whether he cared. Beside him, Mary Evans, 36, balanced her phone in one hand, and Emma's travel documents in the other. Mary's tall, willowy silhouette was draped in a moss-green trench coat, her wavy chestnut hair spilling across her shoulders with a touch of artful disarray. She exuded a gentle warmth, a softness in her gaze that instantly put strangers at ease. Her laughter was quiet, but it lingered in a room like sunlight on water. Under stress, though, Mary's brows drew together in worry lines she tried to smooth away. Becoming a mother had deepened her cautious nature. Her own mother's early illness had taught her how quickly everything could change and how fiercely one must fight for a child's safety and happiness. Emma Evans, their only child, stood half hidden between her parents, clutching a plush brown teddy bear so tight its fur was pressed flat in patches. At 9 years old, Emma was petite for her age, her pale blue rain jacket reaching nearly to her knees, and her soft blonde hair pulled into a loose braid. Wide, curious blue eyes darted everywhere, drinking in the forest of travelers, blinking at the echo of the PA system overhead. She pressed closer to her father's side, each time a new sound startled her, an anxious habit left over from a recent break-in at a friend's house that had made her quietly wary of unfamiliar places. Though usually shy, Emma's imagination danced just beneath the surface. She gave names to raindrops and whispered stories to her Teddy, who in her mind had the bravery of a knight. Together, the Evans family moved slowly through check-in, their passports and tickets passing from hand to hand under the patient supervision of a desk agent named Sarah. Sarah was a woman in her late 50s with a broad motherly build and short silver hair that framed her weathered but kindly face. Her uniform was perfectly neat, a gold pin glinting above her heart, and she greeted every guest with the same practiced but genuine smile. Years of seeing travelers at their best and worst had made Sarah deeply empathetic, but also quietly strict. She had learned after one particularly harrowing holiday season, when a mistake nearly separated a child from her parents, to never let distractions get in the way of details. Elsewhere in the terminal, the steady click of boots on tile signaled the arrival of Ben Miller and his K-9 partner. Ben, 42, wore the Navy uniform of an airport police officer, the badge on his chest reflecting overhead lights. Tall and broad-shouldered, with a square jaw softened by the faintest stubble, and eyes the color of old whiskey, Ben carried himself with a relaxed authority. His presence was both reassuring and commanding, the sort of man strangers instinctively trusted in a crisis. Years on the force had taught him patience, but also a keen alertness. He had seen panic erupt from nowhere too many times to let his guard drop. A long, pale scar running across his left forearm spoke quietly of an incident years earlier, a reminder of risk and resilience. At Ben's side walked Rocky, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a coat of ash gray streaked with coal black. Rocky's build was lean but powerful, every muscle moving with practiced grace. His amber eyes were sharp and deeply intelligent, always scanning, always reading the world with a canine sixth sense. Beneath his working vest, a faint scar crossed his right flank, a souvenir from his first big case. Rocky was a legend among the airport canines, known for his unmatched focus and deep loyalty to Ben. Off-duty, he could be playful, nose-bumping children and letting toddlers tug his ears. But on the job, he was the embodiment of discipline and quiet vigilance. The only sign of his softer nature was the way his ears twitched whenever a child giggled nearby. This morning, Ben and Rocky began their shift with a routine patrol of the main terminal. The air was thick with the scent of coffee-wet umbrellas and the faint whiff of jet fuel leaking in from the tarmac. Travelers brushed past in waves, business people in press suits, families herding sleepy children, backpackers with faces alive with anticipation. Ben greeted several regulars like Mr. Lin, the night janitor, short and wiry with calloused hands and a ready laugh, always up early to support his family back in Vietnam, but his focus was already sharpening, watching for the small signals that meant something was out of place. Across the terminal, another figure checked her reflection in a vending machine window, her heart thumping with nervous excitement. Officer Ava Torres, the newest recruit to the airport K-9 team, was 27, with a slender athletic build and warm brown skin inherited from her Cuban grandparents. Ava's long black hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, her brown eyes bright with eagerness, and just a flicker of anxiety. Her crisp navy uniform was so new it still creased at the elbows, her radio clipped high on her vest, as if daring the world to throw her a challenge. For years, Ava had dreamed of making her mark in law enforcement, inspired by the courage of her late aunt, a pioneering Latina detective who'd fallen in the line of duty. That legacy, both a blessing and a weight, drove Ava to work twice as hard as her peers, even as some senior officers doubted whether she had the toughness for the job. Ava's supervisor for the day, Sergeant Robert Flynn, was a gruff, broad-shouldered man in his 50s, his gray mustache as formidable as his reputation. He nodded curtly as she checked in, then moved on, leaving Ava to study the crowds with a mixture of determination and self-doubt. She watched Ben Miller and Rocky glide through the busy terminal with enviable ease, longing to prove that she belonged at their side. As the Evans family finished their check-in, Sarah handed back their documents with a gentle smile. "Have a safe trip and don't forget, baggage claim is at Carousel 6 in Boston," she said, giving Emma a playful wink. Emma managed a shy smile, glancing up at her parents. "Thank you, ma'am," David replied, slipping an arm around his wife as they moved toward the security line. Mary paused to adjust Emma's coat and brush a stray curl from her cheek, her eyes lingering for an extra moment, just in case. "I'll hold your bear while you put on your backpack, sweetheart," Mary offered, her tone soft but unwavering. Nearby, Ben and Rocky slowed their pace, Rocky's nose twitching as he paused near a group of travelers. Ben glanced down, his voice a low murmur. "Something got your attention, partner?" he asked, but Rocky only flicked his ears and kept moving. Ben trusted the dog's instincts more than any censor. Rocky had a knack for noticing what others missed. Ava Torres watched all this from a distance, taking mental notes of the patterns and movements in the busy hall. She tried to still her nerves. Today she would not just observe, she promised herself, but take initiative if even the smallest thing seemed out of place. With the morning rush at its peak, the Evans family approached the security checkpoint. David double-checked their boarding passes while Mary knelt to tie Emma's shoe, her hands trembling only slightly. Emma glanced back at the big glass windows, mesmerized by the fog as planes disappeared into nothingness, and then squeezed between her parents as they joined the line. Unbeknownst to them, the currents of fate and vigilance had already begun to swirl around them, as a determined K-9, a watchful officer and a rookie eager to prove herself, each played their part in the misty, bustling microcosm of Seattle's great departure hall. The buzz of the airport grew louder as the morning advanced, blending the sounds of rolling suitcases, echoing voices, and the persistent hum of the ventilation above. At the edge of the bustling concourse, Rocky's demeanor changed. His usual measured stride became tense, each step sharpened by a restless energy that Ben Miller hadn't seen since their last major incident. Rocky's ears stood tall, head low, nose twitching with every subtle current in the air. To a casual onlooker, he was simply a vigilant police dog, but Ben knew the subtle signs: a pause too long by the trash bins, a sharp glance at a maintenance door, the fur on Rocky's back prickling with electric anticipation. Ben tightened his hold on the leash and leaned down, his voice quiet but firm. "What is it, boy?" Rocky didn't look up, only pulled gently toward the north end of the terminal. Elsewhere, the Evans family moved with the current of travelers past duty-free shops and newsstands. David, ever practical, took a moment to check their boarding passes once more, squinting through his glasses at the small print, while Mary realized she had forgotten to buy water for Emma's medication. "I'll be just a minute," she told David, her hand brushing his arm, her eyes full of unspoken reassurance before she disappeared into a nearby shop. David caught between monitoring their bags and counting the minutes until boarding allowed Emma to settle on a bench just beside Gate 12, only a few meters away. Emma perched on the vinyl seat, swinging her legs, the teddy bear resting in her lap. Around her, travelers shuffled by, a woman with a floral suitcase and an anxious glance at her phone. An elderly man in a brown cap, hunched and sipping black coffee from a paper cup, his face lined with years and silent stories. Emma, for her part, traced raindrops as they crawled across the window beside her, losing herself in imaginary adventures, with her bear never noticing the pair of eyes that studied her from the edge of the concourse. A man stepped forward, mid-40s, tall and well-groomed, his posture confident but not aggressive. He wore a tailored charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, and slim black tie with neatly parted salt and pepper hair and clean-shaven jaw. His shoes were polished to a near-mirror shine. In one hand, he carried a slim briefcase. Clipped to his lapel was an ID badge that gleamed under the terminal's cold fluorescent light. This was Mr. Carter, whose true name was rarely spoken in public. To strangers, he appeared charming and professional. His smile practiced his blue-gray eyes, always alert, calculating. Beneath the surface, though, was a mind shaped by years of manipulation and opportunity, a man whose affable exterior masked an utter lack of empathy once he had lost his own younger sister in a crowd as a child, and the coldness of that loss had left him convinced that the world owed him more than it ever gave. "Hello there," Carter said, his tone light and friendly, stooping to Emma's level with the ease of a man used to winning trust. Emma's fingers tightened around her bear. "Are you waiting for someone?" Carter glanced briefly toward the crowds, assessing the movements of adults around them, then offered a reassuring smile. "Your mom asked me to help you. She's waiting at another gate with your grandmother and asked me to walk you over. Would you like to come with me?" He flashed his ID badge, which bore the logo of airport security and a name, Michael Carter, beneath a grainy photo. Emma hesitated. The rules her parents had repeated again and again echoed in her mind. "Don't talk to strangers, don't go anywhere without telling us." Yet the man's badge looked official, and his voice was calm, even kind. Still, she shifted uneasily in her seat, her eyes searching the crowd for her father. David, meanwhile, remained standing nearby, but had his attention divided between the digital display of departures and a sudden message on his phone about a flight delay. He was never more than a dozen paces away, but the moment stretched thin as Carter waited, his gaze flickering with silent urgency. On the other side of the terminal, Officer Ava Torres continued her first solo patrol. She scanned the crowds with heightened awareness, her hand never far from the radio clipped to her belt. Ava wore the same crisp navy uniform as her colleagues, but her smaller frame and fresh, unlined face set her apart. Despite her nerves, she tried to stand tall, recalling her late aunt's advice to read the room, watch the people who watch others. Today, Ava noticed something off: a group of 3 men, each standing separately but glancing at each other from time to time. One wore a tan jacket, thin and fidgety. The second, heavier, in a red ball cap, read a magazine but checked his watch every minute. The third lingered near the vending machines, scrolling on his phone, but rarely taking his eyes off the gate areas. They were nondescript, blending easily into the mass of travelers, but Ava's instincts pricked. She discreetly spoke into her radio, reporting possible suspicious loitering to dispatch. Her request was met with a bored response. "Keep an eye, but don't escalate unless they make a move." But Ava decided to trust her gut and linger nearby, watching their subtle signals and noting each movement. Meanwhile, Rocky's unease only intensified as he and Ben neared the cluster of benches by Gate 12. The dog's hackles rose, and he let out a quiet, low whine that Ben had learned to take seriously. Suddenly, Rocky pulled hard on his leash, nose pointed toward Emma and Carter. Ben followed the dog's lead, scanning the area with a practiced eye. At first, nothing seemed amiss, just a man chatting with a young girl, while travelers bustled past. But Ben sensed the tension in Rocky's posture, saw the subtle hunch in the man's shoulders, the way his eyes darted nervously every few seconds. He moved a few steps closer, giving Rocky room to investigate his other hand, resting unconsciously near his radio. Back at the bench, Carter tried once more, lowering his voice. "Come on, Emma, it's not safe to wait here alone. Your mom is worried. Let's go before your flight boards." Emma looked down, her brows knitting in confusion, the soft fur of her bear becoming an anchor in the swirl of uncertainty. At that moment, Mary returned with a bottle of water, her tall figure appearing behind Carter's shoulder. She smiled warmly at Emma, then frowned slightly as she took in the scene, the unfamiliar man crouched at her daughter's level, the tense line of Emma's shoulders. "Is everything all right?" Mary asked, voice polite but edged with suspicion. Carter straightened his expression, never wavering. "Just helping your daughter, ma'am." She seemed lost. Mary nodded, though her hand instinctively tightened on her purse. Ben and Rocky stopped nearby, the officer giving a friendly nod to both Carter and Mary. "Good morning, folks. Everything okay here?" He asked, his tone casual but attentive. Carter responded with smooth confidence. "Yes, officer, just lending a hand. I'm with airport security." He flashed the badge again, but Ben's eyes lingered on the name and the logo. Something about it didn't sit right. Rocky, meanwhile, pressed closer to Emma, who unconsciously reached to stroke the top of his head, relief flickering across her face. Ava, keeping her distance, observed the interaction from behind a magazine rack. She jotted a note on her small pad, watching how Carter stiffened as the real officer approached. Meanwhile, the three men she'd tracked began drifting closer to the same gate, their movements suddenly less casual. Ava radioed again, her voice firmer, requesting backup near Gate 12. 3 possible accomplices converging on a child and 2 adults. K-9 unit on scene. Suddenly a new figure entered the periphery, a janitor named Malik in his early 30s, broad-shouldered and quick-moving, wearing the airport's signature green jumpsuit. His dark hair was tucked beneath a blue cap, and he nodded politely at the officers as he swept the area. Malik was well liked by the staff, known for his sense of humor and sharp eyes. He often noticed things others missed and was not afraid to speak up if something seemed wrong. As he passed, he gave Ben a discreet thumbs up, quietly signaling that he'd noticed the group of suspicious men too. The air around Gate 12 thickened with unspoken tension. Carter realized the scrutiny on him had increased. He quickly stood, checking his watch and stepping back. "Well, I should get back to my post," he said, smoothly disappearing into the moving crowd. The 3 men who had been watching hesitated, then retreated in separate directions, their plan clearly disrupted. Emma let out a shaky breath as Mary embraced her, whispering soothing words. Ben knelt beside Rocky, ruffling the dog's fur. "Good job, partner," he murmured, his eyes sweeping the now quiet corner. Ava approached, notebook in hand, exchanging a quick, meaningful glance with Ben, each recognizing in the other a spark of vigilance and trust. As the Evans family gathered their things and prepared to head to their gate, the uneasy sense of danger faded, replaced by gratitude and a renewed respect for instincts human and canine alike. As the airport clock ticked steadily toward late morning, the energy in the terminal seemed to pulse with invisible threads of tension. Ben Miller's trained eyes moved from the steady current of travelers to Rocky's body language, a stiffness in the German shepherd's shoulders, an unusual resistance in the leash, a persistent glance cast toward the family by Gate 12. Rocky's gaze was locked not just on Emma, but also on the tall man in the charcoal suit who lingered nearby. That same Mr. Carter, whose poise suggested confidence, yet whose presence made Rocky visibly uneasy. Ben felt the weight of Rocky's instincts press upon his own, a familiar partnership forged by crises and unspoken trust. He loosened his grip on the leash, giving Rocky more slack, careful not to alert Carter or any bystanders that something was amiss, but every sense was on alert. Emma, still seated on the vinyl bench, looked up uncertainly as Mr. Carter crouched to her level once more. "Emma, your mother and grandmother are waiting," he coaxed gently, his voice wrapped in the soft tones of authority. He gestured toward the far end of the concourse where clusters of passengers waited for boarding. His fingers steadied the badge clipped to his jacket, flashing under the fluorescent light. The faintest smile tugged at his lips, practiced reassuring, yet his blue-gray eyes flickered with a hidden urgency, a silent command that urged haste. For a moment, Emma hesitated, her eyes darting to her teddy bear, then to the streams of travelers, then searching for her father's reassuring figure in the crowd. David Evans, distracted by an urgent email from his office, stood further down the terminal, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he typed a quick reply, glancing up only occasionally to check the time. Emma's small hand squeezed her bear tighter, her heart thumping with confusion. She had been taught never to go with strangers, but the badge looked official, and Carter's manner was calm, not frightening. She glanced at her shoes, pale blue sneakers, with pink laces, as if hoping they might anchor her in place. Carter extended a hand palm open, and for a split second Emma wavered, wondering if the safest path was to obey the adult in uniform or wait for the familiar warmth of her parents. Meanwhile, just across from the gate, Officer Ava Torres watched through a display of sunglasses at a duty-free shop phone camera, poised thumb ready to capture every movement. She was careful blending in among distracted shoppers, her expression a mask of casual curiosity. Her uniform jacket was zipped up, concealing her badge for the moment, so as not to draw attention. She captured a short video of Carter's interaction with Emma, her sharp eyes noting the subtle way his body blocked Emma's view of the crowd, how he positioned himself between the girl and the flow of passersby. In her earpiece, a colleague's voice murmured, "Don't overstep Torres. Surveillance only, unless you see a crime." Ava pressed her lips together, a spark of determination flaring in her chest. She had promised herself never to let fear of making waves outweigh the importance of doing what was right. A new face emerged among the throng, a woman in her late 20s, curly red hair, framing a face dotted with freckles. She wore a pale yellow blouse and carried an oversized tote bag stuffed with books and a sketch pad poking from the top. This was Harper, an art student returning home from a semester abroad, naturally observant, gentle-natured, always ready to help. Harper's gaze caught on Emma, and Carter, her artistic eye noticing the unnatural stiffness in the girl's shoulders, the tension in the air. Though shy, Harper was sensitive to the emotions of others, shaped by years of supporting her younger autistic brother, and learning to recognize the subtle signals that spelled discomfort or fear. She lingered at a nearby vending machine, sipping a bottle of lemon water, trying to decide if she should intervene. Rocky's agitation grew. He let out a low whine, then a warning bark, drawing a glance from Ben, who bent to whisper, "Easy, boy." But Rocky would not be calmed. His paws scraped against the floor as he inched closer to Emma and Carter, eyes never leaving them. Ben read the message in his partner's posture. Something was very wrong. Trusting Rocky, Ben circled to the other side of the seating area, angling for a better line of sight, while pretending to check his radio. He caught Harper's eye. The young woman nodded subtly as if to confirm his silent suspicions. Carter noticed the commotion and masked it with a genial laugh, turning his badge outward for all to see. "She's just nervous about flying, aren't you, Emma?" he said loudly, offering the crowd a reassuring smile. A few travelers glanced their way, then hurried on, uninterested in airport drama. Yet Harper hovered nearby, and Ava crept a step closer. Phone still recording. At this critical juncture, a security officer named Marcus entered the scene. Marcus was a solidly built man in his early 40s. His brown uniform pressed his stride, brisk but unhurried. With a round face, deep-set eyes, and a booming voice that could hush a room or break tension with a joke, Marcus was known for his fair, fatherly presence and years of diffusing tense travel disputes. Today, though, Marcus wore a slightly distracted frown. His own teenage daughter had just texted about missing the bus, and a worry for her safety lingered in his mind. Still, he paused as he passed by, noting Rocky's agitation and the wary posture of Ben Miller. "Everything all right here?" Marcus asked, voice light but firm. Carter responded instantly, almost too eagerly. "Yes, officer. I'm with airport security helping this young lady." He flashed the badge again, voice measured. Marcus's eyes narrowed imperceptibly. He'd seen plenty of real and fake credentials in his time. "What's your supervisor's name?" Marcus asked, folding his arms. For the first time, Carter hesitated, but masked it with a cough. "It's on my badge," he said, then steered Emma toward the edge of the seating area. Harper, sensing something was off, abandoned her pretense of choosing snacks and stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said softly, addressing Emma. "I think your shoelace is untied." The interruption stopped Carter in his tracks. Emma looked down, confused but grateful for the break in pressure. Ben seized the opportunity, moving in with Rocky, whose fur bristled with protective energy. Ava signaled Marcus with a quick hand gesture, who replied with a nearly imperceptible nod. Suddenly, Rocky lunged, barking sharply, the sound slicing through the terminal. Emma jumped, and Carter jerked backward. Marcus's hand went to his radio, calling for backup. The small cluster of passengers now watched in growing curiosity. Carter released Emma's arm and stepped away, his facade of composure slipping. "Officer, please control your animal," he said, but Ben's focus was locked on Carter. "May I see that badge up close?" Sir Ben's tone was no longer friendly. Emma, heart pounding, pressed herself against Harper, who knelt beside her protectively. Ava, no longer content to remain passive, stepped forward and flashed her own badge. "Sir, I need to verify your identification," she said, voice steady. Carter's face hardened, his eyes darting for an escape route. The faint rumble of approaching backup signaled that his time was running out. But before Carter could react, Rocky's sharp bark and Marcus's commanding presence had drawn another uniformed officer, a tall woman named Officer Lee, who was known for her cool logic and swift action under stress. Officer Lee, with short-cropped hair and sharp features, quickly assessed the situation, exchanged a brief look with Ben, then moved to flank Carter. "Sir, you need to come with us," she said quietly. Carter, seeing himself surrounded, tried a last-ditch effort to push past Marcus, but Rocky growled, blocking his path, and Officer Lee gripped his arm with practiced strength. Carter stopped struggling, surrendering to the reality of his capture, his charming smile gone as quickly as it had appeared. As security escorted Carter away, Emma clung to Harper, and Ben knelt beside Rocky, ruffling his fur with pride. "Good boy, you did it," Ben whispered. Ava stopped recording, allowing herself a slow, relieved breath. In the aftermath, the crowd began to disperse, a low current of whispers and curiosity trailing in their wake. Emma's father finally arrived, breathless and shaken, pulling his daughter into his arms with silent gratitude. As the commotion swelled at Gate 12, the hum of the airport seemed to hush, a ripple of uncertainty passing through the crowd. Rocky, standing rigid between Carter and Emma, continued to growl, his body angled protectively, muscles taut beneath his service vest, every instinct warning that something was wrong. The German shepherd's ears were pressed forward, eyes fixed on Carter, who had lost all trace of his professional calm. His smile faltered, and a bead of sweat glistened at his temple, as he realized his performance was unraveling before far too many witnesses. Ben Miller stepped in front of Rocky, posture firm, but voice even. "Sir, I need you to step back and answer a few questions," Ben said, hand hovering near his radio, but not yet making a show of force. Carter attempted to regain composure, drawing himself upright. "Officer, there's no need for alarm. I was only helping this young lady." But his voice betrayed him, too quick, too controlled, lacking the ease of a man with nothing to hide. Mary Evans rushed forward, her heels clicking sharply on the tile face, pale with worry. She gathered Emma in her arms, whispering soothing words, her whole body trembling as she checked for any sign of harm. David arrived a moment later, his face drawn and anxious, one hand protectively on Mary's shoulder and the other on Emma's back. Both parents looked at Carter with suspicion and mounting anger. Harper, the art student, stayed close, offering Emma her sketch pad to calm her, its cover decorated with bright watercolored doodles, a momentary distraction for the shaken girl. Officer Ava Torres, phone still in hand, approached cautiously, her brown eyes flashing with determination. She stopped beside Ben, quietly showing him the video she had recorded of Carter's interaction with Emma. Ben nodded, his jaw set. "Sir, could I see your badge again?" he repeated, tone hardening. Carter, cornered, produced the ID once more, but this time Ben took it, examining the laminate, the grainy photo, the embossed seal that should have shimmered under the terminal lights but didn't. Officer Lee, tall and composed, joined them. She accepted the ID from Ben, running her finger along the edge. "I'll check this with security records," she said. She pulled out her own device, fingers moving swiftly, connecting with the airport's personnel database. Nearby, Marcus, the security officer, stood between Carter and the exit. His arms folded, a mountain of silent authority. Across the terminal, Ava radioed the control room, her voice measured but urgent, requesting immediate ID verification for a Mr. Michael Carter, claiming airport security. Suspicious badge, possible child endangerment. A woman's voice responded, "Copy that. Give me 30 seconds. Ava glanced at Rocky, who remained in a defensive crouch, only relaxing slightly as Emma clung to her mother. A brief pause stretched the air electric with tension. Then Lee's device beeped. A red warning flashed across the screen. No record of a Michael Carter employed by airport security. This badge number belongs to a janitorial staff member who's on vacation in Oregon. Lee looked up, eyes narrowing. Sir, you need to come with us immediately. Carter hesitated, gaze darting for escape, but Marcus and Ben flanked him, Rocky's warning growl making any thought of fleeing seem foolish. As Carter was gently but firmly escorted away, a new figure entered the scene, a plainclothes detective, Detective Charlotte Rayner. She was in her late 30s, her short salt and pepper hair, neatly styled sharp gray eyes constantly assessing. Rayner's trench coat was classic beige, her demeanor brisk, but not unkind. She had a reputation for handling delicate cases with empathy and thoroughness, shaped by years of advocating for children's safety, after a close friend's tragedy had changed her outlook forever. She flashed her badge and nodded to Ben and Lee. I'll take it from here. We need to move this out of the public eye. Rayner quietly addressed Emma and her parents kneeling, so she was eye level with the girl. Emma, you were very brave. I know that was scary, but you did everything right. She spoke softly, voice steady, offering Mary and David a reassuring smile. If you have any questions or need support, I'll be close by. She gave Harper a grateful nod as well. Harper, still holding her sketch pad, finally relaxed her own nerves, easing as Emma managed a shy smile. Meanwhile, Ava helped Officer Lee collect statements from witnesses, including Harper and several bystanders who had seen Carter's suspicious behavior. Malik, the janitor from earlier, reappeared at the edge of the crowd, having overheard the situation. With his broad shoulders and easy manner, Malik quickly volunteered to help clear a path for the family, guiding gawking travelers away with a few gentle words and a reassuring grin. David Evans, usually composed, found himself overcome with gratitude and guilt for having been distracted even a moment. He pulled Ben Miller aside, shaking the officer's hand with emotion. Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you and your dog hadn't been here. Ben shook his head, eyes kind. Rocky did most of the work. Your daughter was very smart, too. He knelt, scratching Rocky's neck, who wagged his tail at last, finally at ease. Mary took Emma's hand, guiding her toward a quieter seating area. She thanked Harper and promised to keep in touch, pressing a crumpled tissue into the young woman's hand as a token of her gratitude. Harper, cheeks flushed, gave Emma a colored pencil from her bag, an unexpected gift to mark a day no one would forget. As police led Carter away for further questioning, Detective Rayner joined Lee and Ben in the security office. There, they confirmed Carter's badge was a forgery and discovered through quick background checks that he had used multiple aliases in the past, always lurking around transit hubs. Further investigation would be required, but there was little doubt now that his intentions had been predatory. Outside, Marcus remained with the Evans family, keeping a watchful eye. He spoke to Emma, gently telling her about his own daughter's love of teddy bears, which brought a fragile but genuine smile to the girl's lips. Ava Torres, meanwhile, took a moment to herself, near the large airport windows, heart pounding with adrenaline and relief. She texted her aunt's old partner, sharing the good news, a small victory, but one that reaffirmed her place on the team. As the day wore on, the story spread quietly among airport staff. Sarah, at the check-in counter, who'd met the Evans family that morning, heard the news and silently said a prayer of thanks for the little girl's safety. She spent the next few hours handing out extra stickers to every child. She checked in a new ritual that brought her comfort after a brush with tragedy years before. Emma, now sandwiched between her parents on a soft bench, found herself exhausted. The rain outside the windows had stopped, replaced by tentative sunlight pouring over the runways. She leaned against her mother, the teddy bear in her lap, and a new colored pencil clutched tightly in one hand. Whatever happened next, she knew this day would change how she saw strangers, but it would also teach her that good people, some with badges, some with kind eyes, some with loyal paws, were always nearby. A tense quiet followed the unmasking of Carter, but it lasted only a heartbeat. The hum of conversation, the shifting lines of travelers, and the faint announcement of delayed flights seemed to blur at the moment Carter made his move. With a desperate lunge, he seized Emma's small wrist, his grip unexpectedly strong, and yanked her from her mother's embrace. Mary's scream cut through the terminal like shattered glass. For a moment, Emma's world tilted, the echo of her mother's voice, the shock of Carter's cold fingers, the sudden pull through the crowd. Ben Miller's response was immediate. Years of training and instinct kicked in as he shouted, "Rocky with me." The German Shepherd, already on high alert, surged forward, muscles rippling beneath his coat, eyes narrowed with singular purpose. Ben dodged a row of startled travelers, Rocky weaving beside him, both cutting a direct line after Carter and Emma. David Evans, shocked into motion, tried to sprint after his daughter, but the terminal had become a chaos of bodies. A tall businessman in a gray suit, coffee in hand, stumbled into David's path, mumbling an apology as he blocked his way. David, never a man to raise his voice, now shouted Emma's name, his face flushed with fear and frustration. Behind him, Mary tried to follow, clutching her purse so tightly her knuckles blanched, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Ava Torres heard the commotion even before her radio crackled with frantic calls. She spun around, catching sight of Carter dragging Emma toward a service corridor, an emergency exit usually reserved for staff. Ava's adrenaline spiked. She raised her hand to her radio. Code Red Terminal 2, child abduction in progress. Suspect is Michael Carter. Repeat, Michael Carter. All units respond. The urgency in her voice electrified the air. 2 airport security officers responded instantly. Officer Malik, the sharp-eyed janitor, who moonlighted as a volunteer in security emergencies, and Officer Jenna Roberts, a veteran of the force, her chestnut ponytail bouncing as she ran. Malik was in his 30s, stocky with a quick stride, known for his ability to stay calm when things spun out of control. Jenna, lean and quick-witted, was renowned for her ability to read a crowd. Her years spent de-escalating family disputes at airport gates had given her an almost uncanny intuition. Carter breath, ragged, half-dragged, half-carried Emma through the corridor. Emma, dazed but not silent, twisted her wrist in his grasp, using every ounce of her small body to resist. She remembered her father's calm instructions for emergencies. Make noise. She screamed high and piercing, her voice bouncing off the cinderblock walls and echoing into the terminal. Rocky heard her and accelerated, his powerful legs eating the distance. Ben, only a stride behind, caught sight of Carter at the far end of the hallway, ducking through a door that led to the baggage tunnels beneath the terminal. Rocky glanced back at Ben, reading his partner's intent with a look. Ben nodded, signaling him forward. The German Shepherd darted ahead, his nails skittering on the slick floor. Meanwhile, in the main terminal, Harper, the art student whose quick thinking had helped earlier, recognized the threat and didn't hesitate. She grabbed the nearest airport phone and punched the emergency code she had glimpsed on a security poster. Her trembling voice, barely above a whisper, explained the situation. There's a man, Carter, trying to take a girl. Emma, he's in the staff corridor near baggage. The operator, an older woman named Mrs. Weaver, small and gray-haired, but sharp as a tack, immediately alerted additional airport police and sent the code out through the security network. As Carter pushed deeper into the labyrinth of corridors, a new figure appeared ahead. A burly maintenance worker named Sam, dressed in navy overalls, hair buzzed, short arms covered in faded tattoos. Sam had a reputation for never missing a lunch break or a crisis. He was the sort who never backed down from trouble, shaped by his days as a high school football star, and by a bar fight that had left him with a crooked nose but an iron will. Seeing Carter with Emma, Sam planted himself in the narrow hallway, blocking their escape. "You lost, sir?" he asked, voice gravelly. Carter didn't reply. He shoved Emma behind him and tried to force his way past, but Sam held his ground. The scuffle drew precious seconds enough for Rocky and Ben to close in. Rocky, sensing the moment, barked a deep, resonant sound that sent Carter spinning around. Panic twisted Carter's features. He grabbed a nearby fire extinguisher and brandished it wildly, but Rocky advanced, teeth bared, growling low. Ben raised his hands, voice calm, but commanding, "Let the girl go. There's nowhere left to run." Carter hesitated, sweat streaming down his face, caught between the snarling German Shepherd and the unyielding maintenance worker. Emma, her cheeks streaked with tears, made a sudden dash for Rocky, trusting the dog more than anyone else in that moment. Rocky pressed close, shielding her with his body. Behind them, Officer Jenna Roberts and Malik entered the corridor, weapons drawn but lowered, creating a wall between Carter and any remaining escape. Ava arrived a split second later, radio in hand, eyes never leaving Carter. "It's over," she said, her voice steady. "Don't make this worse." For a moment, Carter's shoulders slumped, and he looked every bit the desperate, exhausted man he was. Then, in a last burst of futile energy, he tried to push past Sam again. Sam caught Carter's arm in a vice grip, twisting it behind his back. Rocky and Ben closed in. Ben cuffed Carter, reading him his rights with the cool efficiency of years on the force. Ava checked on Emma, kneeling down and gently brushing hair from her face, whispering that she was safe. As Carter was led away by security, Emma rushed into her father's arms, sobbing. Mary caught up a moment later, folding both David and Emma into her embrace, her body shaking with relief and leftover fear. Around them, airport staff and travelers gathered at a respectful distance, some offering comforting words, others quietly wiping tears from their eyes. Malik, ever practical, led the group back toward the main terminal, helping to clear a path. Harper reappeared, her sketch pad tucked under one arm, offering Emma a drawing of Rocky as a token of hope. Sam, usually stoic, accepted a handshake from Ben, who thanked him sincerely. As calm slowly returned to the airport, the Evans family sat together on a bench beneath the high glass windows. Ben knelt beside Rocky, scratching his partner's ears. "Couldn't have done it without you, buddy," he murmured. Rocky, tail thumping, finally relaxed. Ava stood nearby, quietly texting her superior with a report, pride and relief mingling in her eyes. The clamor from the chase had not yet faded when the true test of Rocky's instincts arrived. Carter, now cornered and desperate, twisted violently, yanking Emma's arm as she tried to squirm away. His grip was bruising his face, twisted in a snarl, as he searched for any gap in the cordon of officers and staff closing in. Emma's frightened sob cut through the heavy air, echoing down the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridor. For a moment, everything seemed to pause, the clatter of feet, the shouts from security, the crackling radios as all eyes turned to the German shepherd. Rocky's hackles bristled, amber eyes fixed on Carter with unwavering intensity. In that suspended moment, years of training and natural devotion merged. Without hesitation, Rocky lunged, jaws clamping onto the sleeve of Carter's suit, with measured force not to injure, but to immobilize. Carter yelped instinctively, releasing Emma. She tumbled to the floor, scrambling backwards until a gentle but firm hand, Officer Jenna Roberts, reached down to scoop her up and usher her to safety. Carter thrashed, trying to shake Rocky off, but the dog's grip was iron, his powerful body bracing against every jerk and twist. Ben Miller moved in voice sharp, "Rocky, stay," and then with swift practiced motions, Ben wrenched Carter's free arm behind his back, cuffing him with authority. Carter's bravado evaporated. He sagged against the wall, shoulders slumped, muttering curses beneath his breath. Officer Jenna guided Emma to the shelter of a nearby staff room, kneeling to her level, her calm brown eyes radiating kindness. Jenna was in her early 30s, with a runner's lean build, neat uniform, and a gentle but unwavering manner. She always carried a lucky locket around her neck, a memento from her grandmother, a quiet reminder that small, steadfast courage could carry you through storms. Outside, Ava Torres moved quickly to coordinate with the rest of security. Through her radio, she relayed the new situation: suspect Carter detained, requesting immediate sweep for accomplices, possible exit routes north and south, maintenance tunnels, lockdown in effect. Her words were clipped, focused. This was her first real crisis, and she was determined not to falter. Ava's face was flushed but resolute, her hair escaping from its tight ponytail, her fingers never far from her notepad, as she cataloged every face and detail for her later report. From the shadows near the baggage area, two of Carter's accomplices who had been waiting for a diversion tried to slip away. One, a lanky man with nervous eyes and a faded denim jacket, darted toward a side door. The other, stockier and dressed in a maintenance uniform, tried to blend into a departing group of actual workers. But Malik, the observant janitor and part-time security volunteer, was ready. He'd recognized the stocky man from earlier, his shoes too new, his gait too cautious for a real maintenance worker. Malik stepped directly into his path, blocking the way with a mop bucket and a broad, easy grin. "Lost friend?" he asked, tone casual. The man hesitated just long enough for Ava and Jenna to intercept and detain him. Meanwhile, Officer Lee, still calm and composed, intercepted the lanky accomplice near the loading bay. Lee's sharp features and no-nonsense stride, coupled with a gaze that seemed to see straight through alibis, were enough to cow even the most seasoned troublemaker. She quickly frisked and cuffed the man, marching him back to the central staff room. Detective Rayner arrived soon after, her trench coat flapping, as she moved with purposeful efficiency. She took charge of questioning the two accomplices, her voice measured, professional, and relentless, a style honed from years handling child safety cases with empathy and unyielding focus. As the main suspect and his team were rounded up, the terminal slowly came back to life. Harper, the art student, stood quietly to the side, hand trembling, as she sketched the chaos, unfolding, her wide blue eyes filled with concern for Emma. Her drawing, a swirl of motion and heroic lines, would later become a cherished gift, a visual testament to a day when a little girl's terror was met with steadfast bravery. Inside the staff room, Jenna offered Emma a bottle of water and her lucky locket to hold, explaining gently, "This has kept me safe since I was a little girl, too." Emma clutched the cool silver with trembling hands, her breathing finally beginning to slow. Mary and David burst through the door, seconds later, nearly tripping over each other in their haste. Mary fell to her knees, wrapping Emma in a fierce embrace, tears streaming silently as she stroked her daughter's hair. David hugged them both, his face buried in Emma's shoulder, his voice hoarse with relief. For several moments, the family simply held each other, the terror ebbing slowly as safety returned. Ben, still at Rocky's side, knelt and removed the dog's vest, stroking his partner's ears. Rocky's tail thumped at last, a soft, rhythmic beat against the tile. "You did great, boy," Ben whispered. In that small, wordless moment, pride radiated between handler and dog, a bond stronger than fear. Ava, watching from the doorway, felt a swell of admiration. She'd been uncertain before, but now she knew with certainty that she belonged in the world of K9 policing. Harper, seeing the emotional reunion, offered her drawing to Emma, an image of a brave dog standing tall little girl, safe at his side. Emma managed a watery smile and hugged Harper in thanks. As officers led Carter and his accomplices away, Detective Rayner paused to brief the Evans family on what would happen next. Her voice was steady and respectful. Emma was incredibly brave. You should all be proud of her and of the officers and Rocky who acted so quickly. She turned to Ben. Your partner is remarkable. We'll need statements, but for now, just take care of each other. Outside the staff room, Jenna checked in with Sarah, the check-in agent, to ensure no other travelers were at risk. Sarah, still shaken, but poised, organized extra staff to provide comfort and information for passengers delayed by the commotion. She handed out free water and snacks, her own form of quiet kindness, shaped by years of helping anxious flyers get home. By the time the sun set, streaks of orange and gold breaking through the clouds, the crisis had passed. The Evans family remained close, grateful for every friendly face, Harper, Malik, Jenna, and especially Rocky and Ben. Ava updated her report and texted her aunt's partner with cautious optimism. "We did it. First real day, and I didn't freeze. Feels right." The airport staff, having come together as a true community, watched as the family prepared to continue their journey, now forever changed by a day that could have ended in tragedy, but was rewritten by courage, love, and the unyielding bond between a child and a dog. In the wake of chaos, the Seattle airport felt strangely hushed. Only moments ago, the halls had echoed with shouts and hurried footsteps, but now a gentler energy settled, a fragile peace built on relief and exhaustion. Emma Evans sat nestled tightly between her parents on a cushioned bench near a row of tall windows, the late afternoon sun painting warm rectangles of gold across the floor. Her small hands gripped her teddy bear with fierce devotion, the familiar fur roughened from the day's ordeal. Mary wrapped an arm protectively around her daughter, stroking Emma's hair with trembling fingers, while David, usually composed and rational, struggled to keep his emotions in check. His eyes glistened as he watched his daughter, unable to let go of the thought of what might have been. For the first time in years, David allowed tears to well up, quickly blinking them away as Mary gently squeezed his hand. Ben Miller, uniform still crisp but eyes tired, approached the family with Rocky at his side. The German shepherd moved with his usual dignified gait, but he too showed signs of weariness, ears slightly lowered, tongue lolling with the effort of the day. Ben knelt down, and Rocky, sensing the moment, pressed his head into Emma's lap. Emma's lips trembled, but she managed a smile, whispering, "Thank you, Rocky." Her voice was hoarse, her words a balm for both the dog and his handler. Detective Charlotte Rayner soon joined them, her beige trench coat now rumpled from hours of work. She knelt beside the Evans family, her manner gentle but direct. "Emma, you were incredibly brave today, and your parents, your love and quick thinking kept her safe." She gave Mary and David a steady look, her sharp gray eyes softening. "Not every story ends this way. You should be proud." Mary nodded, swallowing hard, and David found his voice enough to say, "Thank you, Detective, to all of you." Just then, Ava Torres entered her Navy uniform, slightly askew, her cheeks flushed with a mix of adrenaline and relief. She was accompanied by Officer Jenna Roberts, who now wore her lucky locket openly atop her uniform. Ava was greeted with warm applause from several officers nearby, and even the stoic Sergeant Flynn, her supervisor, a man not easily impressed, approached her. Flynn was a broad-shouldered middle-aged man with thick glasses and a reputation for expecting excellence. Today his gruff demeanor softened. "Outstanding work, Torres," he said, clapping her on the back. "You trusted your instincts and stood your ground. That's what this job is about." Harper, the art student whose quiet intuition had helped change the course of events, appeared, carrying a new sketch. This time she'd drawn the Evans family together, Rocky at Emma's side, and a faint, hopeful smile on every face. She handed the sketch to Emma, who clutched it with shining eyes. Harper, tall and willowy, with her mess of red curls, offered an encouraging nod, her own face flushed with a mix of pride and relief. "You're the bravest person I've met," she told Emma, voice sincere. Near the staff corridor, Malik the janitor finished a quick cleanup, restoring order where panic had reigned. His strong hands moved with efficiency, but there was a gentleness in the way he spoke to travelers who stopped to ask if everything was all right. He reassured them with a calm, steady presence, his ready smile never forced, always genuine. Malik had learned patience and perspective from years of balancing night shifts, never losing sight of the small kindnesses that could turn a bad day around. Outside the police office, Carter and his two accomplices were held in separate rooms. Detective Rayner, joined by Officer Lee, a woman with keen eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, began formal questioning. Carter, his confident facade now completely broken, refused to meet their gaze. The accomplices, stripped of their earlier bravado, quickly began to contradict each other, their stories unraveling as the officers pressed for details. Lee, with her calm voice and sharp wit, noted every inconsistency, every nervous glance, never losing her composure. As news of the attempted abduction spread, Sarah from the check-in counter took it upon herself to comfort nervous families at her desk. Tall and slender, her posture always upright, Sarah brought a sense of steadiness to the terminal. Having once lost a niece to a similar incident years before, she knew how fear could ripple through a community. She handed out stickers to children and offered extra time and kindness to any parent who seemed on edge, her gentle words bringing more comfort than most would realize. Ava took a quiet moment for herself on a bench near the windows, the distant sound of planes ascending into a sky now clear and blue. She thought of her aunt, the detective who had inspired her, and sent a silent thank you into the world. Her phone buzzed with a message from her aunt's old partner. "Proud of you. Keep making a difference." The recognition from both past and present filled Ava with resolve, and she smiled as she stood to rejoin her team. Later, Ben and Rocky completed their official statements with Detective Rayner, the formalities feeling almost surreal after the intensity of the day. Rayner offered Ben a grateful handshake, and Rocky received a rare heartfelt scratch behind the ears from the detective herself. "You saved a life today," she told them both, voice low but firm. As the evening deepened and the airport resumed its rhythms, the Evans family stood together, joined by Ben, Rocky, Ava, and the officers and staff who had become unlikely guardians. David, his voice finally steady, spoke up. "Thank you. Not just for saving Emma, but for showing us what courage and community mean." Mary nodded, her arm tight around Emma, her eyes meeting those of every person who had played a part in their rescue. Rocky stood tall, his posture proud. For a moment, Emma knelt down, hugging him tightly. "You're my hero," she whispered, her face buried in his fur. Ben watched pride swelling in his chest and silently promised himself never to doubt his partner's instincts. In the fading light airport, staff, travelers, and police quietly acknowledged the day's ordeal and its lesson that heroes are not always in uniform, that community is forged in the most unexpected moments, and that the strength to protect and heal is found not in any one person, but in the willingness to stand together, human and canine, stranger and friend. News of the dramatic rescue at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport spread through the city faster than the morning fog that had started it all. Headlines told of a little girl saved from danger, a quick-thinking police force, and a heroic German shepherd named Rocky, whose instincts had changed the course of many lives that day. Local news crews interviewed travelers and airport workers, piecing together the mosaic of courage and community that defined the incident. Even the mayor, a dignified woman with salt and pepper hair and a kind, steely gaze named Helen Parsons, addressed the story in her next press conference commending the K-9 unit airport staff and the family who had shown such resilience. Mayor Parsons had always valued stories of unity and hope, her own past shaped by surviving a childhood house fire and the strangers who carried her to safety. Her praise for the team was heartfelt, her voice resonating with conviction as she spoke of the strength found when ordinary people stand together for good. The Evans family returned home after the ordeal, greeted by neighbors bearing flowers and handwritten cards. Their home, a cozy craftsman with bright window boxes and a welcoming front porch, felt different now, more precious somehow, after coming so close to loss. David, usually reserved, found himself checking on Emma every hour, hugging her with a tenderness sharpened by gratitude. Mary, who had always been attentive, now seemed to savor every moment, even the smallest, as if determined never to take safety or happiness for granted again. To honor those who had protected their family, the Evanses hosted a small evening gathering. The living room was filled with the scent of Mary's lemon bars and David's famous chili. Rocky, his coat brushed to a glossy sheen, wore a blue bandana Emma had picked out herself. Emma, dressed in her favorite sunflower yellow dress, flitted from guest to guest, clutching her teddy bear in one arm and Rocky's thick fur in the other. The officers arrived in plainclothes: Ben Miller, with a new softness in his eyes, Ava Torres glowing with quiet pride, Jenna Roberts still wearing her lucky locket, Harper the art student with a new sketchbook tucked under her arm, and Malik in a clean button-down shirt, his smile as bright as ever. Even Sarah the check-in agent had been invited, and she brought a stack of her homemade chocolate chip cookies, thin, crispy, perfectly golden, a comfort she'd learned to share after her own family's struggles with loss. Before the meal, David raised a glass of cider, his voice steady but full of emotion. "We cannot thank you enough for what you did for Emma and for us. You are all part of our family now." He glanced at Rocky, who thumped his tail in acknowledgement, and then at Ben, whose quiet nod spoke volumes. Mary added, "No amount of words or gifts could ever express what we feel, but we hope you know our gratitude is forever." The evening was filled with laughter and stories. Harper presented Emma with a new drawing. This time it showed Emma and Rocky on a mountaintop, the city of Seattle sparkling in the distance, a rainbow arcing above them. Emma's eyes widened with delight, and she hugged Harper tight. Malik regaled everyone with tales of airport mishaps and small kindnesses, drawing laughter, even from the usually stoic Ben. Jenna shared stories of her grandmother's locket and how small tokens of luck can carry you through the darkest of days. Ava Torres, now officially sworn into the K-9 unit, received her first unit patch from Sergeant Flynn, who attended the party with his wife, a petite, sharp-tongued woman named Marie, with a fondness for crossword puzzles and a surprising knack for baking scones. Ava's hands trembled slightly as she accepted the patch, her eyes shining with the fulfillment of a long-held dream. "I was afraid I wouldn't belong," she admitted quietly to Emma later that night. "But now I know there's a place for all of us who care." Emma, wise beyond her years, after all she had endured, squeezed Ava's hand and said, "I'm glad you were there." Rocky, the hero of the hour, seemed to sense the love and admiration around him. He spent the evening quietly, often settling by Emma's feet or laying his head on Ben's knee. At one point, when the laughter died down, Emma knelt beside him, hugging him fiercely. "You're the bravest friend I'll ever have," she whispered, burying her face in his fur. Rocky leaned into her, his gentle presence a balm that needed no words. As dusk fell and the party wound down, neighbors said their goodbyes, leaving behind casseroles and cards. The officers gathered on the porch for a final moment, the quiet camaraderie between them, a silent promise to always watch out for one another. Ben shook David's hand, sharing a look that needed no translation. Harper pressed her newest sketch into Emma's hand, and Malik offered a wink and a wave before heading out into the cool night. Inside, as Mary tucked Emma into bed, she listened to her daughter whisper a prayer of thanks for Rocky, for family, and for all the helpers who had made her world safe again. David lingered in the doorway, watching his wife and daughter, heart swelling with hope. Meanwhile, the airport continued on, with its rhythm of arrivals and departures, but something subtle had changed. Sarah, ever the steady presence at her counter, now found herself sharing small moments of reassurance with nervous travelers, passing out stickers and warm smiles in equal measure. Malik's laughter echoed through the corridors, a reminder that a watchful eye and a helping hand could change everything. Even the mayor's office received letters from children, thanking Rocky and the K9 team for teaching them what real bravery looked like. For Ava Torres, her new badge gleamed in the morning sun as she reported for her first full shift as a K9 officer. Ben greeted her with a nod of respect, and Rocky nuzzled her hand, recognizing a true friend. Together, they stepped into a new day, ready for whatever challenges might come, their trust in each other and in the power of community forever strengthened. And so, out of fear and chaos, a story of hope was born, a reminder that heroes can be found in the most unexpected places, that the bonds of trust and love are forged in adversity, and that every day holds the promise of new beginnings. In every ordinary day, courage and kindness may be hidden in the most unexpected places. A loyal dog, a stranger's helping hand, a family's quiet strength. The story of Rocky reminds us that listening to our instincts, standing up for each other, and trusting in the bonds we build can change lives even when no one is watching. In your own life, who would you trust in a moment of crisis? And how can you offer hope to someone else? Today, take a moment to notice the heroes around you, both big and small. If this story touched you, please share it. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or your own story of courage, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales. Who is the bravest animal or person you have ever met? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.